evening, everybody. We're at the Town of Mamaroneck Sustainability Collaborative meeting. It's February 1st, 2022. Thank you for joining us this evening. Just to let you know that we are being recorded, thanks to LMC Media. And want to thank Robin Nishinsky, our board liaison member, town council member, for being with us today too. Just want to go over quickly the agenda for today. We have our usual approval review of the minutes, where we would like to approve the minutes. Then on the agenda today, we will be talking about going over the presentation and discussion of the priority recommendations for our climate emergency response, the phase 1, where we just completed that exercise. So we'll be having a presentation by team leaders and on the priority recommendations, and then opening it up for discussion, questions and answers. And we're looking forward to good discussion there. Then next on the agenda is we'll be talking about upcoming events where the collaborative will be involved in, and really looking at March and April for those events. Then we'll be also talking about news and updates, things that have come up recently that are relevant for the collaborative to know about. And then finally, anything else that members would like to bring up. Anybody on this Zoom would like to bring up, we'd also like to leave some time for that. Okay, so those are the items for our agenda today. I'd like to start with asking if anybody has any questions on the minutes. Any corrections? No. Do I have a motion
to approve? Yeah.
To approve it? Yeah, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the excellent minutes from the last meeting. They were superb, Sue.
Do you have a motion to second? Anybody second this?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Everyone in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so looks like we have the minutes approved then. Good. So then I'd like to just move on to the next, the big item on our agenda, which is the priority recommendations for the climate emergency response. And June is going to lead us through this. And I will like to go ahead and share the screen for this. So just give me a moment to switch to the screen sharing so we can go through this.
Sure. And we'll go ahead and chat for a minute, Karen, while you're getting set up. Which is, oops, my notes just disappeared. Hang on.
Can you see it?
Yes.
There you
Is it
go.
on?
Thank you. So over the last few weeks, all of the teams that were working on this exercise met at least once, and the resilience team met a couple of times to discuss sort of a path forward on creating a draft for the Sustainability Collaborative's recommendations for a response to the climate emergency declaration that the board adopted last November. So just to get everybody on the same page, right, the first phase of this project consisted of a review of the 2014-2015 draft plan for a resilient and sustainable Mamaroneck, which was a significant investment of time and really strong thinking. Even though it's a few years old, it's still largely relevant. So we use that as a basis for discussion. Certainly in identifying and prioritizing actions, we didn't limit our team conversations to what was covered in the plan, But yeah, it was a great jumping off point. Another relevant document that Sue was kind enough to send everybody is the list of actions that Denise Dunn and Kat documented for the application, the recertification of our Climate Smart Communities Bronze status. So that's basically a compilation, sort of a roadmap of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation initiatives that tell us what actions local governments can take to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to a changing climate. So that was another very valuable foundational document. So tonight, we will see for the first time as a group the recommendations from all three teams. So for this evening, we focused on initiatives and for the purpose of the discussion and prioritization that the groups undertook the last few weeks, we're focused on initiatives that will require board decision and approval. Okay, so this is not about what the collaborative is going to do independently for outreach and education. And Robin, when we say independently, it's never going to be without coordinating with you, escalating, up and through your board colleagues. But, some of these things don't require time of the board members. So today we're really talking about things that we are going to need to sort of cascade up through our town board. And also tonight we're going to take just sort of a high level view. So we are not near perfection on this. These recommendations that we're going to review tonight, just a starting point. You're going to see some big ideas that are pretty major. They may take multi-year efforts to get off the ground. And then some of these things are smaller initiatives that will maybe require some level of coordination with Meredith and town staff. And we're going to weave these together. So we have sort of a multi-layered perspective. Okay, so it's not like a race where everybody starts at the same time and at the same place and, and we go. So that's how we're going to lay this out. So as we organize this, this part of the meeting, we have set this up so that each team leader will present their recommendations. And remember, we said aim for 3 to 5. Karen representing the resilience team, the sustainability team, and for me representing the quality of life team, figured our groups can probably come in with 3. We knew the resilience team, which covers much more ground, was going to need more. So that's why we said 3 to 5. Mitch, the 5 was for the resilience team, right? So right now, as we go through the recommendations, we're going to suggest that we limit questions to just understanding what those recommendations are. We're going to open it up to get into the weeds after we've presented all 10 or 11, however many there are, recommendations. So we invite discussion, again, to clarify after we've presented all of them. We're going to jump in and start getting feedback, maybe debating, discussing. And just to sort of finish the thought on this, we will take all of the input and feedback from tonight, and we're going to interpret it. And that's going to lead us to phase 2. So again, this is sort of a preliminary look of recommendations and strong ideas. Phase 2 is the discovery process, where we're going to identify what additional information we need to sort of qualify these recommendations and hopefully queue them up in the weeks and months to come. So any questions about the process? All right, so Karen.
June?
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be easier for us if we need clarification to do it right after you presented it, as opposed to waiting till the end and then having to keep all 3 separate. Who said what?
Yes. I apologize if I wasn't clear about that. We'll entertain questions after we present each section, but those will be mainly to understand what those recommendations are.
That's
and then
good.
we'll get into more of a, sort of a dynamic discussion later. So, Karen, are we getting a full view of your slides?
Yeah, should we go over the assessment criteria or just, well, we can.
Yeah, we can go through that. Is everybody getting a full view of Karen's slides? For me, it's minimized, but let me change my view.
Yeah, it's it's almost a full screen.
Okay, great. Got it. Okay, good. So as far as, the starting point, we talked last time about as we evaluated the various recommendations that were made in the draft report, the draft plan from years ago, we were going to be consistent. So regardless of which program or which team the recommendations were evaluated by, we looked at rating those by environmental impact, timing for implementation. Is it near term stuff we could get off the ground in a year or two, midterm 3 to 5 years, and some things may need more, a bigger time frame to bring to life. And the third element that we were using to evaluate our ideas and recommendations is resource requirements. Do we need a lot of staff? Do we need a lot of infrastructure? Do we need capital and funding? So that's the criteria that we were all using to rate and rank recommendations. We were going to do, I think we were going to do sustainability first, but
do that. Sure. Want to do that? We can.
Yeah, go ahead, Karen.
Okay. So we'll start with the recommendations from the sustainability team. Originally we had there was an overlap with resilience in terms of looking at buildings, but there were two categories. I mean, waste, reduction of waste, and then looking at buildings, at how buildings, in terms of building codes and building development, but basically zoning and codes. But since the resilience team did a really deep dive on building codes, I've decided to take it out, the buildings portion out of the sustainability, since that will be, that has been looked at very deeply by the resilience team. So the recommendations that the sustainability team are really more focused on waste minimization, including diversion of food scraps from the waste stream. And these are the three key things that we are recommending. The first one, providing recycling bins next to all trash receptacles in local government buildings, public spaces, and town events. This recommendation comes from, this wasn't actually in the draft sustainability plan, but it's one of the action items in the Climate Smart Communities action checklist, which would give the town points, and which it hasn't secured yet. So it seemed like it made sense. This was like a low-hanging fruit where, recycling is important to climate, addressing climate, since we all know that recycling reduces waste, but also it reduces energy consumption, right? And thereby reduces greenhouse gas emissions, because creating new materials out of recycling, out of recycled material involves generally uses less energy, and therefore less greenhouse gas emissions result. So creating this culture of recycling and making sure that it is consistent, it's consistently there in our municipal buildings, public spaces, and in our events, seems to be very important to in terms of the town taking a lead on this and showing consistency on this. And so we think the climate impact will be high. The timing is something that can be done immediately. We think that, there are recycling bins. And I think it's a matter of consistency. We're going to look into exactly why we didn't get full points in our climate smart communities certification process for this action. But we think that this is something that we should be able to rectify in the near term. And we should be able to get points for this. And we think it's also just important in terms of making sure that culture is there. And second point is on food scrap. Second and third points really relate to food scrap. And food scrap recycling, as we know that this food scrap recycling program started in the fall 2017 and the voluntary drop-off program. And food scrap recycling addresses climate change in reducing waste, but also food scrap recycling is important because it creates compost, which is very powerful in its effectiveness in capturing and storing carbon in the earth. So this is something that we all can do, right? This is something we can all contribute towards creating compost and helping to store carbon in this nutrient-rich soil. So we would like to therefore propose, firstly, to expand the access to the food scrap drop-off, because right now we know that Maxwell Avenue Recycling Center has got limited hours, normally 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., but not every day. So we think that in order to increase participation in food scrap recycling, it's important to make it more convenient for people to get there or to drop off their food scraps. So we think there are different ways of looking of doing this. It's, you could increase the hours or what we are looking at in terms of expanding access is to consider other drop-off locations or have a drop-off bin outside of Maxwell, perhaps locked outside of its when it's closed, so that people can access it and still drop off their food scrap. But ensuring that that is also secured. So there are a few different options to look at, but we think that it's worthwhile to dig into this and investigate this further, so that we can increase food scrap diversion from the waste stream. And thirdly, the third priority recommendation is piloting curbside pickup of food scraps, because basically expanding access is one step, right? Increasing participation, but really curbside pickup, just like recycling, picking up recycling, that we feel that is needed to make it the most convenient for everybody to participate and to encourage community-wide participation in food scrap recycling. And so in terms of piloting it, we have recently seen that there are different steps to making this happen. Village of Mamaroneck recently proposed a resolution to designate food scrap as a recyclable item, which is an important step towards piloting towards starting curbside pickup of food scraps. So we would like to see if this is a step that makes sense for us, as well for our Joint Sanitation Commission, in order to go forward towards curbside pickup of food scraps. So we think that the impact here, I mean, for both the access of the food scraps is high, and for the drop off, we think that that's something that can be done soon. For pilot curbside pickup, we think that the step towards the resolution, something such as that could be done in the near term. The operational part of it may take a longer term. So the resource requirements for the piloting curbside pickup are mixed depending on the different stage. But the first part about working towards a resolution, we think that will be low, but the operational part could may require more, obviously, in terms of looking at routes and all that.
Right.
So those were the top three for the sustainability. And I mean, I'd just like to ask, you know, any of the members if they'd like to add anything, or any of the people who are part of this team. And also just ask if there's any questions of clarification.
I'm just astonished that on bullet point number 1, that this has never been done already, that this has never been separate trash receptacles for recycling bins in local buildings, public spaces and the like, that we've never been doing this.
I think this is a matter of consistency, that it hasn't, you know, I mean, this was brought to our attention during the Climate Smart Community certification process, that this is something that our town doesn't qualify to get full points for at this stage. I mean, I've seen, you know, so I think it's a matter of consistency and documentation that's part of the problem. But, you know, to be honest, I haven't been to the town center for a while, or, you know, I don't remember, you know, seeing how, just, I mean, in terms of that building, what the setup is.
So Karen, you know, Sue is over the chat is saying, you know, recycling bins are in all offices of town buildings. So
Okay, thanks for pointing that out.
Great.
So recycling bins are all in all the offices. So that's good to know. So then it's also in public spaces and at public events, the town-led events, like such as the Memorial Park concert in the summertime, in you know, the food truck festival. So that's what they mean by town events. Well, that those recycling bins need to be there next to the garbage as well, and there has to be proper documentation of that.
Right. So it's not
to make sure there's evidence.
Right. So this is not a matter that we haven't done it. It's just a matter of us actually documenting this and making sure that that's crystal clear. We do this so we can get the climate smart community points going forward.
That could be it. Yes, we hope that that's just a matter. I mean, in the ideal situation, it's just a matter of documentation. But you know, so that's why we want to dig in a little bit deeper to just make sure that, to find out whether there are recycling bins at all of these locations and at the event. And if it's not being done consistently, then, you know, to make sure that this is a consistent practice. But then also to make sure that there's evidence to show that this is done.
Is it just in government buildings, or is it throughout the town and the schools in the downtown, you know?
It's just municipal buildings.
And then we also need to have the recycling bins in the rest of the town, right?
Well,
whose job is that?
You mean like in private buildings or in schools?
On the Boston Post Road.
You said town events, Karen, right?
Yes, town events. So we're
park, or, you know, movies for all ages. But I don't know that, I didn't understand your comment to mean out on the roads and streets and public walkways.
Who's my comment or Karen's comment?
I guess Karen's, because I think you did clarify that, Michelle. You're asking about everywhere or just specific dictated places?
I guess.
So it is specific places, you know, specific places that are within the jurisdiction of our municipality, right? So which are government buildings, the public parks, the public spaces, like we said, Memorial Park, for example. and then at town-led events, town-organized events as well.
So I think that the movies during the summer, right? I mean,
Mhm.
Sue, those
That's a good
areas
example.
are really well set up for recycling, right? And if the offices all have recycling, then the question is, where do you need to check? And I don't know, do the schools fall under this? I guess it was one of my, I'm going to ask the general, I don't know. I'd like to ask the general question now of on climate smart communities, you have a range of points for almost each item. And there's no guidance as to where we are now and where we have to go. So is it an interpretation of how you read the question and answer it, and then you negotiate the points, or is there more guidance?
Well, there has been guidance, actually. I mean, the reviewers of our application have given us feedback. I mean, such as, and, the list that was, that Sue included with the agenda, she sent the color-coded checklist, which Denise had
Denise, do you happen to know the answer to that question?
showing, what has been done, which actions have been awarded points, which ones.
Karen, maybe Denise has, I don't know if she's able to chime in at the moment, but.
Here she is.
Yeah. Hi, Denise. Do you know why we didn't get full credit for the points on recycling in the offices? Was it that we didn't have documentation, or is that did we miss areas? Are we uncovered, are we not covered with bins in some places?
For this, but I know that there was reviewer comments. For some reason, I think it was something to do with the timing. I'd have to look at the exact reviewer's comments, but it was.
Take that up offline.
Yes.
So we move on, but that's an action item.
Yes, and I believe it was a simple one too.
Good. Thank you.
I just asked, I just wanted to ask, does it have to include paper, or is it just plastic and cans for the recycling? Do you know, Karen, is that, or Denise?
Well,
and is that in the offices? Is it, also paper recycling?
So I just say overall, I think these are such great questions. And I know that there was specific reviewer feedback. I just think it would be a thing that we centralized, and maybe June and Karen, maybe there could be certain action people for each of these items. I think it was
a good idea.
Yeah.
This may be getting, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, it's always continuous. That's another thing, so it does need to stay live.
Okay. So Karen, we probably need to move on to other presentations, but let's make a note that this needs some follow-up.
Yeah, sorry, I got cut off, so I somehow was disconnected. But you're talking about all 3 points, right? Or the recycling?
This was on the bins, the second one.
Okay.
The offices. This is maybe a time where Robin might be able to answer a question for us. I think some of us are under the impression that, the state mandates lots of what happens on school grounds. It's not a town function to sort of legislate
I can't give you a definitive answer, but
and it may relate to what the action is.
Right, is responsible for its own, as would the villages. I know that the village of Largemouth and the town share a sanitation department, but the village of Mamaroneck is separate, and each of the villages have their own rules about things that are different from the town. And the same goes for the school. So I'm not sure exactly what the different responsibilities and divisions are, but I think you're wise to question what they are, even if we don't know the answer.
Thanks. Okay, great.
Yeah,
Thanks.
my understanding is the schools have their, the separate jurisdiction in terms of, I mean, recycling is required by law, right? And by the county, right? So, but in terms of making sure that the recycling bins are set up and, who's responsible for that. So the school, in the case of schools, the schools are responsible for that.
All right, why don't we want to stick to our agenda on timing
Yeah.
today. So let's move to the next and we can pick up the follow-up. Thanks everybody for identifying some of the follow-up steps that we need to take.
Okay.
On that. Do you want to move to the next?
Yes, you see it. So I got, okay. Okay, sorry. I guess I got, the screen sharing got cut off. Let me get back to that and share that. Do you see that?
Yeah, thanks very
Okay.
much.
Okay.
All right, George, this one has your name on it. The first recommendation here is, and I caution Robin, don't get alarmed, but we're just free thinking here. And we want to, so one strong recommendation was banning the use of gas-powered leaf blowers for municipal, commercial, and private residential use on a year-round basis. We believe this has a high impact, and we're hoping this is a timing of near-term but ongoing, and resource requirements may be low. The key here is that studies have shown that, I mean, even beyond the fact that gas-powered leaf blowers decimate the ecosystem and all kinds of living things that are visible and not visible to our eyes in terms of natural life, studies have been conducted that show that the 2-stroke and 4-stroke gas-powered leaf blowers produce emissions that are equivalent to 7 times the equivalent of gas of driving a pickup truck. So the carbon footprint, the emissions are enormous. They're staggering, 7 times the equivalent of driving a pickup truck. So that's our basis for recommending, as our neighbors in the village of Larchmont have done, ban the use of gas-powered leaf blowers. Second recommendation is to paint bike lanes according to the master plan that was presented previously as part of the town's DPW road maintenance program. So essentially, as repair and repaving happens, that's an opportune time to add the sharrows and the markings that encourage bike transportation, and it's essentially encouraging a safer, healthier mode of transit by bicycle, particularly for students and for short trips by all riders. We would amend this by saying, heck, if the town can add some low-cost bike racks, install more bike racks in town's public spaces, and around commercial establishments to some extent, that just makes it more bike friendly. We know that even for short trips, especially for short trips, we think about the feasibility of this, but idling itself has been estimated to produce, millions, 30 millions of tons of CO2 on an annual basis. I mean, basically, the impact of short trips is much more significant than I think we often give mind to. We just need to, hop on our bikes for a mile or so and to run a quick errand. But the idea of adding sharrows and bike lanes as maintenance, routine maintenance is being done, could really be efficient. And then lastly, adding native plants and shrubs to town properties. So the town center has a lovely display of plantings right outside the building. But Memorial Park, there's opportunity for more. And here's the thing that's kind of ironic. You know, we think about native plants as kind of small in physical, in terms of physical space, but the impact is tremendous. You know, it's a protection and restoration of nature. And sorry. In fact, for those who follow Doug Tallamy, who many of us who have gardens and participate in the Healthy Yards program well know, Doug Tallamy is an entomologist who posted today on his feed and social media something that I think relates to native plants and shrubs on town properties, but all of healthy gardening. And his quote is 2 sentences. In the past, we've asked one thing of our gardens, that they be pretty, but now they have to support life, sequester carbon, feed pollinators, and manage water. And those are all the heavy lift that that plants, and especially native plants, help us accomplish. So we're saying the impact of adding native plants and shrubs to town properties is high, and the timing can be pretty near term. If we don't have questions, yes.
That was great. I wondered if we could add trees to that. There might be some spots, certainly along the road strips and other places where there is a space for a tree, and it would be wonderful, according to Doug Tallamy, to add a few oaks and other trees as well.
Absolutely. We're covering trees under green infrastructure as part of resilience.
Okay, great. Perfect.
But absolutely. And
fantastic. Great. Thank you.
I appreciate that you raised that. Thank you. Karen, you want to move to resilience?
Yeah. Let's do that.
I'm looking for Mitch theory. Okay. Go for it.
Mitch?
Are you muted, Mitch?
You're right.
Oh, yeah.
It's a 2 microphone thing for me.
Yeah.
Anyway, good evening, and good evening, Robin. Thanks for the opportunity to present our initial recommendations from the Resilience Group. Resilience was actually one of the original main components of the 2014 plan, because even back then, we recognized that as a coastal community in Westchester with storms like Irene and Sandy, and with an electrical grid that seemed to short out in one neighborhood at another every time a squirrel made the wrong turn, that resiliency was really something very important and fundamental to the facts of our lives. So for this initial effort, we actually ended up with 9 people. Long time and original members like Michelle Lewis and Mark Carell, leaders of many of our current focus areas, Arlene for trees, Mark Manley for renewable power, Kevin Crow as a big helper on the Repair Cafe, Denise Dunn is now leading up our Climate Smart Communities effort, Nick Zuba for financing, and even newcomers like Mireille Ferrier. So everybody contributed. We ended up with 2 meetings, more or less finished within a 2-hour time limit. As you saw earlier, Robin, we organized our responses and proposals into 4 areas: energy and power, green infrastructure, including trees, buildings, and emergency preparedness and response. So we considered not only the actions that were part of the 2014 plan, but we recognized that because times had significantly changed, some things had gotten better better laws, better frameworks for sustainability in the future. Some things had gotten worse. The planet keeps getting hotter and GHGs really haven't stopped going up. That perhaps there were other ideas, other new actions that the town might want to really focus on instead. In the end, between the 4 categories, we identified 56 actions, which we prioritized 11 actions for the board, which were boiled down over the weekend to the 5 you're going to hear about now. 1 from energy and power, 1 from green infrastructure and trees, 2 from buildings, and 1 from emergency preparedness and response. So just an alert to the resilience team members, if you don't see some of the things that we all talked about and nominated, please understand that as part of the process, we were at 11 ideas, more than twice over our limit. So at least we got to 5. So I'm going to do this in a slightly perhaps different order than's listed here, but we'll see whether we can find it. If this is on 2 pages, Karen, you may end up on the second page, because as the first action we'd like to talk about, it's for town Mamaroneck facilities. We would like to see the town end the use of oil and gas before the end of the 2020s. We don't have a specific date for that yet. We believe this has a high impact. The town, after all, facilities today, they contribute to our GHGs. And the town has been a leader in environmental issues, but we really don't want, and probably the board doesn't want, residents to say, hey, you guys are talking the talk, but you're not walking the walk. So this would be a tangible achievement to be able to lay out to all of our residents that the town understands the government frameworks, the town understands where all this is going, and the town is going to continue its leadership by plotting our own independent course to get off of oil and gas. As you can see, we think the impact is high. The timing is more of a medium-term thing. Resource requirements actually maybe not as low as identified here. There are going to be some significant investments and some significant leveraging of programs from other governments, from legislation, from other things to make this happen. But from the point of view of the board, setting a target based upon a very clear and implementable plan that the collaborative will deliver as part of this recommendation, the town can stake out the high ground and can say once again, you know, we're not just one of everybody else. We're not just going to wait for the New York mandate. We are going to be, like we were with the climate emergency declaration, one of the first communities in Westchester County to plot how to get this done. For the second one, perfect, it's on this page. Backflow preventers. So a lot of conversation about why did we need this? And wasn't this about health and not about resilience and not about GHGs? Well, we all know about climate change. We all know about extreme storms. We all know about overloading of our sewer system. And what we found during the recent storms is that where basements, say in the gardens, or frankly, in our neighborhood in Howell Park, where the floors of basements were below the top of the adjacent sanitary sewers, and where those basements had bathrooms. And this happened to my neighbor across the street. And their cost for getting this fixed was a 6-digit item. Sewage flowed back up through tubs and toilets and throughout basements. Major, major cost impacts to local homeowners. Some of our homeowners here at Howell Park had pretty good insurance companies. And the insurance adjuster showed up, said, yep, that's damage, all right, wrote him a check. Not everybody has homeowners insurance like that, apparently, and nobody knows that until it's too late. So for others of our neighbors and other people around town, they would say, really, that's not really supposed to be covered, and it could have taken 2 or 3 months to get to the same result. So what's the solution? Backflow preventers. This is something that gets attached in the sewer outfall from all of the things in your house on its way to the street. It prevents backflow, prevents the uphill flow from the sewers back into your house, especially if you've got a basement and you've got plumbing that ends up being below the top of the sewer. This one has a high impact. It's not everybody in the town. It's not every commercial establishment. It's not every club. It's not every house of worship, but it's some of them. And for those homeowners, members, it's very important. This is something the town could do in the very near term. The town could say tomorrow that backflow preventers are a good fix. It's a good way to improve the resilience of the place you own, the place you worship, the place you frequent. And the town actually has no costs in making this happen. All the town has to say that this is the right thing to do and encourage it. And again, from a political point of view, this is something that is immediate, it's tangible, it is effective, and it's an action the board can take to make a demonstrable potential improvement in residents' lives and their resilience. So back to the first page, please. Karen?
Okay, yeah, trying to get,
Just the prior page, yeah.
no, sorry.
Perfect. Okay, we'll do the tree code. Sounds like a plan. So, Robin, I am sure by now, perhaps, that you've heard about the tree code and you've heard about our tree canopy. The tree team, which was founded in 2020, spent a lot of 2021 preparing information for the board, which was submitted and in the end, not yet acted upon. So this particular recommendation has 2 parts. One is within the code, eliminate the exemption of properties of less than 20,000 square feet from the application of the code itself. So the simple way to think about this, Robin, is that we have a tree code that self-cancels for 90% of the properties in the town of Mamaroneck. That doesn't seem like the kind of tree code we really ought to have. The second part, still related, for all of the reasons that June was just talking about in terms of shrubs and their ability to sequester carbon and soak up water. As we said in 2014, we're saying again, we said last year, we really need to make a demonstrable improvement in the town's tree cover. We worked with a CUNY professor to identify where our tree cover was in 2016. You've probably seen those maps. What we know is because storms have continued to happen, the town has cut down more trees than it has planted every year since then. And because the town doesn't count a lot of the trees that residents cut down because 90% of the properties are exempt from the code and the requirement for a permit, our tree canopy is decreasing. We propose to create a plan that we will deliver with this recommendation to the board to show how we can make a demonstrable increase in the tree cover of the town without infringing on private property rights, and do so by concentrating first and foremost on the areas the town actually controls, on the streets, on those little ribbons of green between the curbs and the sidewalks, And actually on the first 5 or so feet inside any street facing property line where the town has already for decades undertaken a responsibility to trim or remove trees that become dangerous for either during a storm because they've fallen, or even when the utilities decide that the tree is posing a danger to wires. This one politically is in 2 parts. The second part about the tree cover, we think it should be an easy lift for the board. Who doesn't like trees? The second one, we recognize that this will take some doing, but we will put the information together that the town board can use in your own communications and deliberations, and the collaborative will use out in the community to make it clear that on this one, we actually can have our cake and eat it too. Number 4, we're gonna do the bottom one, permeable paving. So this one is probably the most obscure. Right now, when somebody wants to enlarge their house, heaven forbid, tear down their house and rebuild it, there's an important calculation as part of a building permit, which calculates the impermeable area of a property against the total area of the property. It's called the impermeable surface area. What it means in real English is if the rain falls, it doesn't go into the ground, it goes off to the side, whichever side it was. When you look around town, what you realize is that impermeable surfaces that aren't the house itself, that are the driveways or the walkways, can certainly be 15%. And in many cases, especially as the lots get smaller, up to 35, and the driveways have gotten bigger, up to 35% of the total impermeable surface area. So this is a problem, especially since the code, when it was written decades ago, imagined a ground whose ability to absorb moisture is not the ground we have today. I'm sure you know where you live, the rest of us know where we live. When water falls this year and rain falls last year, it doesn't go into the ground the same way that it went 5 or 10 years ago. So the ground that we have left is less able to absorb water. The impermeable surface makes that more difficult. The proposal and solution is if residents, multifamily homeowners, if commercial properties will change their paving, whether it's walkways or driveways, parking lots, to permeable surfaces of a type that we will help the town identify as something with long-term viability as being permeable, those surfaces can be removed from the impermeable area calculations. If you're a homeowner and you were bumping up against the impermeable area allocation, but you really wanted to bump out a room or maybe enclose, put a deck on a porch, and you couldn't do it, making this change, the town will actually help you make that happen, because you're trading off something that's good for your overall property, and in return, you're helping the residents get something that they'd like. So we see this one as a win-win. And then finally, PACE financing. We all know that we're heading toward a zero GHG economy and infrastructure in buildings. The state has passed laws, the national government's doing things, there's this infrastructure bill. But the funny thing is, at least in the town of Mamaroneck, there are quite a few houses who already have long outlived anyone who has occupied. And in fact, I live in a house that's going to be 92 years old. I hope I live that long. But this house is quite likely to be around by the time that we're supposed to have cut our GHG use and our energy use by 50% or 2030, 2035. And for any house that was built younger, like the houses that were built after World War II, or even some of the ones that have been rebuilt in the last 5 or 10 years, they are going to exist for 2/3 or more of their useful lives in what has to be a zero GHG economy, and none of those houses, with the exception of one that Michelle helped design in the town, actually are net zero GHGs. So how do we do that? PACE financing. This has been proven around the country and in neighboring states like Connecticut, where Nick Zuba headed the commercial PACE financing program, that this is an easy thing for governments to do to allow our residents, our homeowners, our multifamily residents, our houses of worship, our clubs, and our commercial properties access to lower interest, very affordable financing for energy saving improvements at no cost to the town. We think so far, although this has come up before, that there's really been kind of a lack on the collaborative's part to provide the right conversations and the right data to the right people at the right time. We're actually encouraged that you're on the board now, frankly, because you're a new voice and a new vote. And we believe that marshaling this together, we will believe that this is a very important thing. And if you think about the flow of money to first the clubs, the houses of worship, and the multifamily and commercial properties, there's my dog, with C-PACE financing, and then eventually PACE financing for residences. This is the biggest single thing the town can do to help put affordable financing and money into residents' pockets, to help residents do their part to achieve a net zero GHG economy. Finished.
Mitch, thank you very much. This is Mark. On the last issue that you discussed, you used the word residence many times, but the wording says multi-family residential buildings. So are you proposing it for residents such as yourself and myself, or is it only for multi-family?
Okay, the current program, which has been adopted by New York State, is C-PACE, meaning commercial, which applies, as far as I know, and Nick Zuba is here to correct me, would apply to clubs, multifamily, houses of worship, and commercial properties. PACE financing, also applicable to residences, exists in many other places across the country. New York State has not yet adopted it, but our companion recommendation would be that as soon as the state adopts it, that the town also opt in.
So could you put that in parentheses so that it's there when you're considering it as part of
If we're
it?
not over our word count on this, we'll certainly do that.
Any other questions?
Robin, any questions?
I can't think of any questions right now. I'm taking notes. And as you know, my job is not to give opinions about any particular thing, but to pass along the suggestions that you have to the board so that we can all consider them in the proper way, in the proper time. And part of it is how to consider them and when to consider them. And I will certainly pass them on.
Denise Dunn reminds us that PACE financing is also part of the climate smart communities, and will definitely help us, keep our point total moving upward when we want to reapply a little bit later this spring.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, by the way, that just simply to opt in, I believe you would get 7 points just to opt in. That's all you got to do. Just have the town board opt into the program. Then you can get additional points if you can prove and show that projects have been financed within a jurisdiction where it got opted in, the town of Mamaroneck. So that's also too, where again, those extra points could come in. And then Robin, really just for your edification, this has come before the board a couple of times. And the 2 different times it was really rebuffed, the concept of CPACE in this case. But I think as to Mitch's point, we maybe didn't do as good of a job to communicate to the right people at the right times about this concept. And, that's certainly education work, and that kind of, basically, just the understanding of that in this case will be done with the proper parties in this case, and then we will go from there.
Yes, I understand that communication is key.
Yes.
I'll do my best to help facilitate that.
Thank you. Great. Any other
Should we go-
questions, debates, comments about what's been presented today? Anybody disagree? Want to push further for anything?
Here's a summary of the recommendations as well. The 11 priority actions that we reviewed.
Thanks, Karen.
So it's all up there. Yeah, and at this point, we'd like to open up for discussion for, views on any feedback on any of the proposed actions that, in terms of whether they make sense, whether.
Michelle?
Quick question.
I think there was a huge amount of information and points that's been well compressed. Certainly seemed overwhelming in the very beginning. I want to be sure that the work that the tree group did over the last, 18 months or so, they came up with more than just reducing the 20,000 square feet out of the code. And it was more collaborative with the community, and that work be phrased somehow to not just increase the canopy, but to inform neighbors, because it isn't just the house where the tree is removed that suffers, it's the neighbors as well. And some of it is just done as whim. And I guess just to share with you, Robin, this started as properties were just clear cut by developers before anything was even planned. So, there's the collaboration even with the other agencies under the town, so that planning knows about it, building department knows about it, conservation knows about it. And with that, I don't know if it's with the same tree code or it's covered under the quality of life. When we boil everything down to the quality of life, I think that removing the pesticides to achieve clean air and water in our town is something that over the last 10, 12 years, we've really been, we've considered a major import. So I think that adding the native plants will help. And I think that in the next generation, if there's a way, the town properties don't spray any pesticides, but there's also a program that the village of Mamaroneck adapted from work that was done by someone on this committee to remove this spraying for the mosquitoes and used a different format, but that the air is, we concentrate on the air and the keeping our fish alive and our, it ripples. So I don't know just where you'd like to add it into your framework, but I think I commend you and all of you to take some very major points and to disseminate them down to this, and that we can certainly add from this. But we will need the help of the other agencies in order to really pull this off, Robin. You know, these backflow preventers goes into the building code, and, you know, it's just, the trees have to be discussed at planning and yada, yada, you know, there's a lot of, you know, of mix, but I say, good job, everybody. Really, good job, right?
And also, Michelle, part of phase 2 of this project is we're going to explore what else needs to happen, what other information, what other resources need to be examined to go forward with recommendations. So anything that's interagency, so to speak, we'll be identifying. And Robin, I didn't mean to cut you off. I heard you start, and Michelle had
Sorry.
started simultaneously. So if you even remember what it was.
Sorry.
Actually,
Sorry.
there are people, I was just going to ask, and that was a great idea, June, about the next phase, identifying how things, where and how things could happen. But this summary of recommendations and all of your slides here are going to be in the minutes. You're going to send them around so that
Yes, we can certainly include them. Yeah.
And of course, these 11 recommendations, Robin, that's not everything, but this is where we're starting. So this was a first pass. Basically, you know, 5 minutes into 2022, we spread out and said, you know, what can we do to see what's out there? So there's a lot more work to be done. We're not ready to write the first draft of our recommendations, but there's some pretty high impact ideas that have been put out there. And so there's lots to do, and communicating them to you and to your fellow board members. I think, Mitch, I think you spoke to this as well. We need to do a smart job of putting this together in a way that is consumable by our town council. So we'll be putting a lot of thought into how to make it doable, not just to come out and say, this needs to be done, but how can we roll it out? What's the timing? What resources need to be done? And we recognize that decisions need some time as well. So we'll be mindful of all of that. So great. Any other debates, contention? Mark?
Yeah, just I'd like to suggest something. Number 7, number 9, and number 11 all have to do with the key issue in this town if you talk to residents, which is flooding. The word flood or flooding does not appear here, period. I understand it's the reason why, but I think it's very easy to say increased tree cover to mollify, increase or decrease or whatever you want to say, flooding, so that you're giving a reason why, besides carbon dioxide uptake, that's more immediate to the town. Let everyone else plant trees in the forest, but in the town, we need to tackle flooding, and we need to tackle runoff, which is number 9. There are some other things, but that's my point.
Yep, good point.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Any other comments or thoughts?
I have a question. I noted that Mitch talked about the soil, the earth having changed in recent years, and that really stumped me. I'd never heard of that. Mitch, what is that about?
So I can't claim to be a geological engineer, but what I can tell you is that our soils, at least in the part of town where Howell Park is, are fairly clayey. They're not sandy. And although there is rock, the profile of the rock is quite variable, and where the rock plunges a fair amount down below the surface, What's filled it in is a clayey soil, not 100% clay, but a fair amount. What we've seen, my neighbors have seen in Howell Park over the last 10 years is that areas that used to drain, don't drain, naturally into the soil, don't drain as well. What seems to be happening is that the clay is slowly compressing. The ground level is actually dropping in some areas, and that therefore the soil doesn't hold the water the way it used to. In two areas within our neighborhood, this is certainly obvious. We have low-lying areas right around the corner from us where the water tends to pool in people's yards. And then in the internal parts of the block between Howell Avenue and Palmer, in the block between Weaver and down to Hawthorne, what's happened is that the town, decades and decades ago, for whatever reason, installed a sewer system to help drain the backs of all those yards because they were low-lying anyway, and drainage was difficult. About 7 years ago, that system it was obvious that it was no longer functional. Residents worked with the town, worked with Steve and the town engineer at that time, and eventually brokered a deal whereby the town actually rebuilt the sewer, which now for the present is working better than the old system did, which was no longer working. But what was also true, George, is that when they reset the inlets were 6 inches to a foot lower in the new sewer configuration than they were in the original configuration. So that's an indication that not everywhere perhaps, but in areas where this is susceptible, the ground level is actually dropping.
Thank you.
I have a question, Mitch, from your excellent presentation, and I know very little to nothing about this topic, although I'm very interested in permeable pavers. But did your team look at the possible impact of taking the driveway out of the equation, making it possible to build much bigger houses on smallish lots, and what the climate or carbon footprint impact of that could be?
Well, that's a good question. And I think what the collaborative can say is that probably what Robin already knows, that the zoning code in the town for the residential areas related to total ground coverage by buildings, related to height, related to basements, related to side and front and backyard setbacks is a hot issue. And I think, Libby, you probably also remember that we talked about that some with our board liaison last year. And the intent was that the board would take that up as a study separate from the comprehensive plan, because they recognized the urgency and what is going to continue to be the urgency of tear downs and rebuilds. So I'm not sure that Robin has an update for us this evening and where that all sits, but Libby, what I can tell you is that the proposed action will reward residents potentially for doing the right thing, and actually does not necessarily, what will happen to the zoning will really be in the board's purview.
Okay, great, thank you.
But as of my understanding, the board or the town has their own engineer who evaluates those permeable surfaces on each lot. And there was no give at all for turning the driveway into a permeable surface in order to be able to throw that into the numbers on the site. So unless there's something that's happened, but they seem pretty set on, even if the driveway was permeable, of using it as a non-permeable surface.
So maybe
And
these are
that's-
some issues we need to look into for phase 2, and you guys can make a list of the question marks that need to be answered and posed to the building department, to the town engineer, and whatnot. And so we can see where we stand and how that impacts the recommendations.
So
Agreed
June,
with
you don't,
That's part of our homework.
but you don't have any place on this list of items for work to be done with the building department.
Because that
I
wasn't the
think-
goal for today. That's what we said. Phase 2, we said that in the introduction to phase 2 is the discovery process. Today, this was about unearthing some ideas. And we know that this isn't everything that's gonna be recommended, but this is a starting point.
So then it gets added into this.
It's sort of a qualification process.
I'll leave it there.
Okay, good questions. And we need to, one reason we have the benefit of making a recording of this is we can go back and capture these suggestions more effectively than taking notes and trying to listen at the same time. Thank you. And as part of the discovery process, Michelle, I'd like to hear more from you in the future about the house that you guys helped design in our community that is so efficient.
Well, it would be great to take you on a tour through there, and once COVID is finished, I think that, the goals of being able to set up talks and tours through there when we were working on it really
Right.
went straight down the drain. So,
And I'm looking, Michelle and Robin are next to each other on my screen. Michelle's an architect, so
Robin knows.
I know.
know each other.
I know
Robin
Michelle
and I go way
as
back.
long as I know you, right? Long
Okay.
time.
All right. Great. Terrific.
Should we move?
Yes, we're gonna, if there's anything else on these, this is not gonna be the last time we raise these and revisit these. We're gonna see them with more dimension next time. And we maybe reaching out to you in the next couple of weeks. But thanks everybody for putting such smart, thoughtful, knowledgeable ideas together. And everybody here was an amazing contributor. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
There was a point that came up the other night in one of the discussions, which I guess goes to you and also to Robin, which is how much energy the people on this committee who work on all these things need to put into each of the items that they're working on if the board is not inclined to engage it at all. And we've been left holding some people have been left holding the bag for some time. And I think that it all takes a lot of time. So I think that whatever guidance you can give this committee, how to move forward would be helpful.
That will be my goal. I can see that you already are extremely thoughtful and dedicated and ready to put in the work. So I will do my best to communicate that and see what the board needs in terms of education so that they can decide what they, really want to pursue. I mean, all these ideas sound great. As a practical matter, I know the board is going to pick and choose perhaps or prioritize or, so I think the idea of the phase 2, where you're also thinking about, from a practical standpoint, this has to go to this department, this has to go here, this
Right.
has to go there, makes it easier to take it in also and kind of think about how things could actually really happen. But I will pass on what I've heard.
And we're going to as well, Michelle, I appreciate you bringing that up. one of the things that we're doing this year is taking a fresh look at communications style and how to improve our success as a committee with some adjustments to the way that we communicate. The amount, it's obvious that the amount of work that's put into a lot of these initiatives is staggering. Nobody in our community can afford for these not to be successful. Part of that is helping our board be successful. So we're going to be not only mapping this out in terms of process and pragmatic approach, but trying to look at ourselves and hold ourselves accountable for how to more successfully communicate our ideas. And that cues up Karen for the next agenda item, which is upcoming collaborative events.
That's right. Do you see it?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so, we're looking at events that are coming up where we are going to be, the collaborative will be participating in some way or organizing. So these are things that are coming up that we wanted to highlight that we can look forward to.
And can I congratulate you, Karen, because one of the things that we're trying to do here is not to overthink, but to better organize. So we're going to have a collaborative calendar, and that's going to help us not only in seeing at a glance what all of our opportunities to engage with the community are, but to stream in planning. How are we going to promote? What's our follow-up? What are our goals? And how are we going to achieve our goals? So Karen has started to design a calendar for us, and we have an opportunity to get a preview just for very near term for happenings in March and April. Good news, we have 2 opportunities to help educate and inform in our community in some different approaches. I don't know if we can't really do a show of hands here tonight, but for anybody here sign into the Largemouth Mamaroneck Summit once a month, usually Tuesday mornings around 8. For those who used to go to the Nautilus Diner for those, we would arrive at 7:30 and get a little breakfast and hear a speaker. But we are participating, and we're not sure exactly who the speaker is, but March 8th, this is the topic for the Largemouth Mamaroneck Summit is sustainable landscaping. There'll be a whole group of people addressing this. Lisa McDonald from the Largemouth Environmental Group. We may have some elected officials speaking about this. The Healthy Yards team is planning to have a voice in this as well. And it's a great topic. The time is great. So we're on the agenda for next month at the Largemouth Mamaroneck Summit. That's a event where community leaders from all corners of Largemouth and Mamaroneck, representing all kinds of organizations and services, get together. And it's just a great way to share thinking and start getting our message out among people who really know how to make things happen. And so it's a really wonderful group. The other thing is we have our second community class coming up at the Continuing Education Center for Continuing Education. We had a great event in October that Nick and Mark Carell led on how to save energy and reduce your carbon footprint. The director of the center was really pleased at the turnout on that. And we have the one that's coming up March 28th. I hope everybody registers. So it's a community event, meaning there is no charge. Martha is encouraging everybody to come and listen in. We are recording these, Now, we haven't yet established a replay schedule. We don't know yet, but we're going to find out. If people register but can't make it that day for the live session, we're going to find out about access at a future date. This one it is a Healthy Yards presentation because for everybody, Healthy Yards is accessible to everybody. You don't need a big yard. You don't need to be a gardener. You don't need to have professional services. This is for anybody who can put a plant in a pot. You know, it's everybody. So it includes all of us. This is a busy person's guide to a lush lawn and a beautiful, healthy yard. What's not to love, right? It's easy, it's beautiful, it's rewarding, and everybody has a role to play. And this is something that, in addition to the events coming up, which you see. Also, we're looking forward in April to having also another compost give back, and we'll be exhibiting at Constitution Park for Earth Day. Here's something different about our events, and they're all wonderful. When you look at the list, and Denise Dunn submitted this for our Climate Smart Communities certification, we put together a list. We did actually a whole PowerPoint of ways that we've engaged with our community: information, education, inspiration. And we do a heck of a lot. Every event, every place we've turned up, it's a lot. But here's what's different this year. We are not scheduling many individual events. We are beginning to put these together. We are going to talk about these events and promote them with relation to carbon footprint. Karen and I had an interesting discussion about what does compact compost giveaway have to do with carbon footprint. So we won't go into the detail now because we're running out of time, but from here on in, when we talk about all of our fantastic events and volunteering, it's going to be in a different context. We're going to be sure everybody understands how this helps climate change. And the other thing, we are working from a communications point of view on grouping these together and looking at quarterly announcements. So what's going to happen in spring? What's going to happen in the summer? What's going to happen in the fall? Because this isn't about 15 different individual efforts. This is a bigger statement about how everybody can have a touch point for reducing our carbon footprint. It's what the town needs to do. Our municipality is going to do a lot and already is doing a lot. We're going to do more, but everybody has a role to play. It's not that everybody wants to have a role to play, but it's one planet and we're all here and we have to make an effort. But the Sustainability Collaborative in our communications and all these fun events that we do, Repair Cafe, Compost Giveaway, where everybody is like patting each other on the back. Hello, I'm at Maxwell Avenue dumping my food scraps and everybody gets to know each other. We're going to be presenting an image that is going to make sense. It's going to be educational. It's going to be inspirational. And people are going to begin to better understand why we're doing this. The state has mandates for sure. We know about the Climate Act. Many residents won't know about the Climate Act, but you'd have to live in a little box and not take off the lid to understand that our world is facing an emergency. It doesn't have to be a terrible outcome. If we all step in, we can reverse this to some extent and really enjoy the benefits of it. I feel like all of my Healthy Yards partners and people who've been wonderful, Elizabeth, and spreading the word about pollinator pathways, and everybody who has been on a tour or who has picked up a brochure or who has signed up is already starting to spread the word. We have almost 300 Healthy Yards. People have taken the Healthy Yards pledge. There was a great turnout for pollinator pathways tours last year. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people are bringing food scraps to Maxwell Avenue. I mean, we're on a roll. We just have to do more to engage the community and help everybody learn and show them how easy it is to contribute. So we really have an awesome plan this year for wonderful events, but we're taking a slightly different turn at how we're going to share them with our community and bring everybody up to speed in a really upbeat way. Mark.
June.
And Jim, very good. I noticed that the town supervisor put out for the first time a calendar for the month of February. I'd like to suggest that one of the things is to integrate these events into a town calendar that gets disseminated to all residents. Part of our problem over the years is getting this information to residents. And if we can somehow tack on or integrate our information into a town calendar that gets distributed, it's a win-win.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. The Village of Mamaroneck does that as well. We're refining our message as far as the Sustainability Collaborative goes. But yeah, hopefully all that will become seamless.
And I'd also recommend we find a way to embed that on the website as well.
Yeah,
You know,
the idea too is we
get a digital
plan
presence.
to we
Yeah.
plan to rewrite the Sustainability Collaborative page. There's limits to what we can achieve in terms of developing that just because of the site architecture, but it's on the top of the desk to revisit that and revise it. And we have the beginnings of, thank you, Sue. We have the beginnings of a new communications team. Guys, anybody who wants to be part of it, you don't have to write, you don't have to design to be part of it. We're really filtering our message and how we reach out. And one of the new volunteers who attended our last collaborative meeting, recognizing not everybody can come, you know, Laura Workin, who's an amazing designer and helps not-for-profit organizations with their social media and their web development. It's really hard for her to make our monthly meetings, but she still wants to participate in communications. So we will have other opportunities to get people together. And, you know, Nick, you might set us straight about some things that we don't understand about CPACE or about energy efficiency. So we're going to be getting more information out and it'll be more inclusive. But Karen, thank you for getting started with a calendar.
Yeah, and just to highlight in case people didn't see the chat, Sue's comment that all collaborative events will be included in the new monthly sheet. So I guess that is the plan for
that's great
for events to the new town supervisors.
So we're a little bit over our timing. And for those of you who notice, we're trying to make the meetings a little bit more efficient in terms of timing. There's so much to share, and we all have so much to contribute. But Karen has some really interesting updates, and we want to leave room for any walk-on topics as well.
Before we go on to that, can I just, while we are on this calendar, this upcoming event, and highlighting the April one, where we are having the Earth Day. We've been asked to participate in Largemouth Environmental Committee's Earth Day celebration, like that was last year, where, you know, there are tables, and it's an opportunity to raise awareness among our community members about easy ways, easy, fun ways, like June was saying, that they can get involved in lowering their carbon footprint and helping our community move towards, you know, taking action on climate. I just wanted to put out the request that we are looking for a volunteer coordinator. So if you or anybody you know would have interest in coordinating our volunteers for events like this, where we need volunteers there, you know, the compost giveaway is obviously another one, but, you know, there'll be other events. We would like to, we are looking for somebody who can take on that role, who can bring in the volunteers and can make sure that there's a way that it's there can be a platform like Santa Genius or whatever it is to send out to recruit the volunteers for these different events that will be happening starting in spring, where we need volunteers. Okay, so why don't we just go?
Michelle?
Oh, yeah, sorry, Michelle.
I have a question. It's probably for Denise. I
Mhm.
mentioned it to Sue before. If there's a way that the Climate Smart matrix has something that gives you a heads up on what points we have for the different items. There's some things, there's a range of from 2 to 22 points for some items. And I think it's a question of what we've done and what we have yet to do. So, it's probably just one more square on the outside to know where we are.
And maybe that's a good point for a walkthrough. June and Karen, I don't know if you had a chance, but the League of Women's Voters in Westchester actually had put together a presentation last year. It was very educational, and there are some best practices, but Michelle, I'll meet with you and do a walkthrough. And to let everyone know, this is a quarterly, actually evolving process. So things come on, things go off. So it's been an education curve for me too. And even the evidence that they need. So we'll work, it's a continuous process. So
If you do a walkthrough, Denise, can you do a Zoom and record it so other people can benefit from that?
yes.
Okay.
That'd be very beneficial.
Okay. Let's
Great.
say in 2 weeks, I'll get that together.
Thank you.
Whenever it would help being able to give some input.
Yes, agreed. Planning.
Karen, do you want to wrap up with news and updates?
Yes, why don't we do that? Just wanted to highlight that in news and events, just things that have come up that will be relevant for us that to know about. One is the comprehensive plan. So we all know that, as you may remember, that the comprehensive planning process was kind of put on pause for a while because the consultants who were brought in, it didn't work out, that relationship. So, but now the comprehensive plan is going to resume. They've found the Pace University land use, Lula, the people there, I forget the land use, what is that acronym? Land use and something.
That's what it is.
They are going to be the consultants that will be taking up the comprehensive plan. And we've been asked to have the steering committee. I've been asked to be on that steering committee, the comprehensive plan steering committee. And the plan is for this steering committee to start, I believe, sometime this month. So they're pulling together the steering committee for the comprehensive plan, and they want to get that going this year. So that's good news. And it's good news that the collaborative will have a voice in that. So just want to let you know. And so I will be bringing you updates, and it'll be an opportunity for you also to be continuously updated and to provide feedback as well in the process.
Yeah, I just want to echo, it will be a great opportunity for the Sustainability Collaborative to have a voice in the future of the town.
Yeah.
As plans are being put together on how to move forward, in a positive way.
Yeah.
So I was very glad to hear, Karen, that you were going to be part.
Yeah, and thank you. And luckily, Robin was in the first steering committee. I was first steering committee of the comprehensive plan, so she also has insights about the process.
Yes,
so I think that will really.
I was on the steering committee as a member of the community and a former member of the Board of Ed, and now former member of the zoning board. But now that I'm on the town council, there's only one liaison, and that liaison is going to be Jane, which is good because she's the town supervisor and she's very interested. So she's going to be the liaison. So unfortunately, I'm now off. So, but I'm going to be following it very closely. It's going to be very interesting and exciting. for the town, I hope, and a very positive experience. And this new group seems really great. The other group just really wasn't getting its act together, and I agreed that it should be disbanded the way it was before.
Okay. Great. So, and the other bit of news we wanted to update you all, so that everybody knows, is that last Monday, January 24th, the Village of Mamaroneck, the Village of Mamaroneck's Board of Trustees unanimously approved approved a resolution that establishes that food scraps is a recyclable item. And the importance of that is that, you know, by approving this and this designation that food scraps are recyclable, this means that this is within the existing job scope of sanitation staff, of Village of Mamaroneck sanitation staff, and it's also in alignment with the collective bargaining agreement with the union of the sanitation staff. So this is an important step that has come to light, that, you know, that is important in terms of getting towards curbside pickup of food scraps, right? And we are going to be, we've set up a meeting with Ellen Silver, the chair for the village's committee for the environment. We're having a meeting with her next week, next Tuesday, in order to better understand how they, you know, to better understand the importance of this resolution, and how they were able to get unanimous support for this from their board, and what are the next steps.
Yep. Because
this seems like probably a template that is very relevant to us. And so we want to better understand, you know, whether this makes sense for us also as a direction for us to go. And because this was not, so this is something that we really want to learn from, because obviously our municipalities and neighboring municipalities are very similar in terms of the way they operate. And so this is an important step, this type of resolution. If this was critical, we want to know, and we want to let our board members, you know, let them know how that can be beneficial too. It may not be obvious.
So a lot to celebrate at the last couple of minutes of our meeting. Yay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's pretty big news.
Yes. I had one question. I've been down, and I don't know where this sits, but I've been at Maxwell Avenue, and they don't seem to have any more of those small compostable bags. Is that something, is it a supply chain issue? Is it like, who do we go to make sure? Because I know there was two women with me at the same time, and they were kind of frustrated. And I thought, you know, if that kind of makes or breaks somebody doing it, what's the status, and who's responsible for that?
Well, apparently, I mean, they have ordered it, and there's been a delay. But meanwhile, I was told by I spoke to Ron Schulhoff, the zero waste guru in Scarsdale, and he said we can actually, you know, we can buy the compostable bags from Scarsdale.
Where?
In the meantime, because
really?
they buy in bulk, in much bigger bulk than our sanitation commission does, I believe. And so they said they would be willing to sell it to us so that we don't have a shortage. And I did inform Carlos about that.
Okay.
To let him know that, you know,
Isn't it true that we don't really need to have compostable? I mean, we need compostable bags if we're putting stuff in bags, but I mean, not everybody uses a bag. We're trying to reduce the waste stream, and even though those are compostable, I just put my stuff in the bin and bring it. I mean, you don't have to put it, you're not required to put it in a bag to bring it to
you're not. Yeah,
but I think a lot of people do it, especially for transportation purposes. It makes it a lot easier and cleaner. One other thing, just as an FYI, the Stop and Shop in New Rochelle, their produce bags are BPI compostable.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
Recent-
Not the
Okay,
one
thank
in
you. for-
Larchmont, in the one in New Rochelle, over by the Home Goods. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I've been
Okay.
using that the last week.
Okay.
And it
Great.
is,
Well, thank you, Julie. Thanks
it
for
is-
letting us know.
Maybe this is a time for us to send out some information to the email list that we have, and just an update for people.
Yeah.
They know about this. Thanks, Judy. Karen, we ran over our agenda timing.
Yeah.
So,
But I guess this is an opportunity for people to bring up anything that they would like with kind of in the other. I
yeah,
don't think there are any other updates unless anybody else has any other updates they want to bring up that we didn't mention that would be relevant for the sustainability collaboratives to know.
Mm.
Okay. Or any other matters anybody wants to bring up? Anything you'd like to bring up?
I don't have anything.
I'd like to put something on the agenda for March or April, and that's just the words farmers market. Just put it out there as to what is going to happen, if we're going to do it in the summer, if we're going to do it in the fall, if we're going to do it in the spring.
Karen,
I
do you
know
want to address that, or is it too soon?
it's, let's
Yeah.
just table it.
Okay,
That's the
okay.
discussion.
Yeah, okay.
It's been up for discussion recently, so thanks.
Yeah.
We'll get back on that.
And it's actually, I mean, this is an important thing. It's on the Climate Smart Communities action list as well, right? Having,
Okay.
you know,
Okay,
engagement in the farmers market is
All right,
important
thanks.
action.
thanks,
Okay, thank you,
everybody.
Mark.
You're welcome.
All right,
Anything
so
else?
we'll be in touch.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
weeks ahead. Good
Great.
to
Thank
see
you.
everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Good
Thank
night.
you.
Thank
Have a good
you.
night. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Good night.
Have a good
Yeah.
night.
Thank you, LMC Media. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Anthony.
Hey, Kevin,
Right.
you better look quick because it's going. It's going soon. Doctor gave me permission. Cut it. By the way, for all of you left, happy Groundhog Day tomorrow. Enjoy.
But Mark, it looks so good. Was it getting itchy?
Oh, it's beyond itchy. It's now very good.
Oh, wait,
Doesn't
hold, let me
itch
take a
at all.
screenshot. Let me take a screenshot. Ah, I got it.
I'm sure you did.
Oh, is that you, Mark? We didn't even know.
No,
You
this is
didn't know?
incognito.
That's people from the town won't recognize me. I have my hat in the other room. By the way, just since, let's see, who's still here? Okay. Oh, they're still streaming to YouTube. Ah! Why don't you cut YouTube at this point? LMC, ask them to stop.